Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about magic, Commander, and anything else that I deem necessary. Now, this episode's coming out late because I'm recording it after commandfest Indianapolis. So this is going to be our commandfest Indianapolis wrap-up. And I do want to start this with a breakdown of what the total cost of me going was. So, the pass that I bought for the weekend was $350. My hotel was $395.46 for the 3-day stay. It took me $90 in gas to get out there. It took me $100 in gas to get back. And my total for food for the weekend was $113.12. So, the trip cost me $1,048.58. And honestly, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I definitely saved in some areas, particularly food. I just didn't spend a ton on food, and I wasn't terribly hungry over the weekend. I did have one dinner where we went out with, I don't know, a ton of people, and that cost me like $30. Yeah, I think I just want to say that it was worth it. I finally got to meet some people that I've only known from online. Like, I finally got to meet Andy and Coyle from the Guardian Project podcast, and Kyle and Parker, and Geek Beardley from their Discord, and EK Plays, and Seraph 6, and Sheldon Menery. Now, I do regret that I didn't get to meet everybody I wanted to. Like, Anna MT was there, but there was never a point where I wasn't busy, that she wasn't busy, that I could kind of connect with her. And the same is true for Rachel Weeks. Just didn't have a time where I could mesh up and meet with her. But, you know, there will be other events. I do think this is going to be the only Command Fest I go to this year. I might start thinking about Vegas for next year, because I'm sure there will be one in Vegas next year. And yeah, you know, my experience there was, well, my experience was good. But my expectation was to go sit down and just jam Commander with online friends, which is essentially what I did. I do know Pastimes had a few hiccups. Some of them not necessarily their own fault. I do know their allotment of Double Masters 2022 was, I believe they said, halved, so they were running out of on-demand 2022 Double Master drafts. That didn't necessarily bother me all that much. They did, for the 3-day plus passes, which is what I bought, there was a meet and greet, not necessarily a dinner, but like a hangout on Saturday. I didn't actually go to the hangout. I just kind of showed up, got what I needed to get, said hi to a couple of people, and then left. But some of the invited guests were not invited to that Saturday gathering. That includes people like Anna MT and a girl named Ron and Dana Roach. And it wasn't until like a couple hours before then, when people were complaining about this, that Pastimes finally sent them an email asking them to be there. So, I think pastimes could have been a little more organized. And yeah. Other than that, the vendors were great. The artists were great. When I first got there and it was, after a 9-hour drive and it was rainy and muggy and hot and I had taken a box of cards to sell. So I just went to the back of the hall, sat down, had a lovely conversation for like an hour and a half with the guy as he was going through the box and sorting them out into what they'd be willing to pay me. And it was nice to just kind of relax there and, I figured I'd get maybe a couple $100 in and there was some spicy stuff in there. I walked away from that booth with almost $800. And that really kind of pushes home the point that I've been thinking about for a while of I need to sell off some of my collection because it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, that was kind of like the overall experience in a nutshell, basically. And I think when I come back for the second part, we're just going to talk about some of my general, games that I played, some of the things I was very happy with, some of the things I was a little less happy about, and I'll be right back.
Hey, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff, believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast and me, you can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them.
And we're back. Now, for this part of the podcast, I kind of want to talk about some of my games and experiences playing at commandfest Indy. And I do want to start this with one of the things I feel bad about. So, I was playing a game. I was playing my Adelies deck, and I was playing against Yeva and Brutaclad and the new horror mill guy, Captain Nagathrad. I'm not even sure how to say it. Well, the Captain Nagathrad was basically just the precon out of the box and proceeded to go turn 1 land Soul Ring Signet, turn 2 land into something, turn 3 played their commander, and then turn 4 played a Mind Crank. And I was sitting there going, that's going to be an issue. On my side of the field, I hadn't really done much. I went land, Adelies, hit Brutaclad for 2 because there was a meme going on at that point where I'd always attack him first. So on my turn 4, I look at the Nagathrad's board and I play my land and I go, oh boy. Cards in hand, and somebody says 5. And I'm like, alright, that's good enough. 3, I cast Jessica's Will. They go, okay. So I make 5 red mana. I exile the top 3. It's land, expansion, explosion. And I go, okay. With the 5 red mana, I'm going to cast Mana Geyser out of my hand, which made an arbitrary amount of red mana. The important part was it was enough to do what I wanted to do. So I had one open source I could tap for blue. I used that to cast Ponder. Looked at the top 3, all lands, shuffled, and drew. And ended up putting a Brainstorm into my hand at that point. But then I used the red mana to cast. Then I cast Unleashed Fury. And then I responded to that by casting Expansion. So that gave me 5 cast triggers, which made Adeliz a 7/7. The first Unleashed Fury doubled that to 14. The second one doubled it to 28. And then I hit the Captain Nagartharod's player for 28 in the air on turn 4. And I feel a little bad about that. But he was very scary. After that, the other 2 were kind of going back and forth, and they just gave me the time I needed to, rebuild. The next turn I played Azusa and started drawing some cards to refill my hand, and yeah, I ended up winning that game 4 turns later. So that's just one of the games that I feel a little dirty about. But overall, most of the games that I played over the weekend were either very close in power level, or the difference was so negligible that it was barely noticeable. And yeah, I feel like we had a pretty good understanding of what casual was, what challenging was, and what competitive was. I was walking around with Chris Fitz. We were just kind of looking for a game, and we asked a couple if they wanted to play, and they said, well, we have 30 minutes before our CEDH pod is supposed to fire. So we were like, well, do we just want to play a higher powered game? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I was playing Najila. The person next to me was playing Yuriko. The person on the other side of them was playing Ranar. And then Chris was playing Kaidel and Crom deck. And this was a great showcase of why I don't play Najila in casual pods. I did not win that game, but everybody at the table, by turn, I want to say it was 5, was threatening the win. So in my case, if it got back to me, I had Najila and 7 warriors, the ability to activate her to get an additional combat. The Yuriko player I had put down to 6. The Yuriko player had put everyone else down to single digits. I was only above single digits because I had activated Najila that turn to pump my life up as much as I could. Then the Yuriko player had a chance to win on their turn. That was shut down by the Kaidel Crom player. Then the Ranar player did a bunch of stuff, ended up stealing Najila and Yuriko, and then killing both me and the Yuriko player. And then Chris was able to win that game just by looping as many things as he could to get instants and sorceries into his hand with a gutter snipe into play. That game only took us about 25 minutes, and that was after mulligans and everything. It was the quickest game I played over the weekend, and one of the most fun games I played over the weekend. Now, there was a few times where I just played some 3-player pods because we couldn't find a fourth or whatever. I will say the last game I played, which was the only game I played on Sunday, I played Nadar. I was playing against the same Brutaclad. I was playing against Omnath, Locus of Mana, and Greasefang. And that game, like, everybody got to do their thing. And the Brutaclad player ended up winning, but the Greasefang player had been reanimating stuff from his graveyard and swinging big ol' machinery around. The Omnath player had a giant Omnath and a couple other beaters, and everything had hexproof, and he could regenerate his stuff. Brutaclad at one point had 5 Goldspan dragons, which was hilarious and awesome. And playing Nadar, I completed the Dungeon of the Mad Mage twice in the span of about 5 turns. So I kept a hand that originally didn't have any white mana in it, but it had an Ash Baron, so I could go get white mana. So I did that on turn 1. By turn 3, I played Nadar, do some stuff. Turn 4, I play a Radiant Solar. That gets removed, which is fine. That was kind of bait for removal, so that my next turn I could play Eldrazi Displacer. I think is the one. The 3-mana one that can flicker a creature. And started going to town because at that point I had the ability to make like 12 mana with 3 colorless sources. So I end up flickering Nadar to finish the dungeon, which puts a Panharmonicon into play. And when the Brutaclad player tried to remove the Eldrazi, I had a flicker card in my hand to save it. And that kind of got out of hand, but I don't think it was oppressive. Because even though I had giant creatures by the end of it, I didn't have a way to either give them flying or trample, and there was plenty of other blockers. Yeah, it was very typical Nadar, but without something like the Avacyn and Odric combo, I can't really do a ton. But yeah. In total, I did play 15 games over the weekend. I can report that I'm very happy with the change I made with my Rakdos Dragons deck, which was Kolaghan, the Storm's Fury, and it is now Ganax Astral Hunter, which is from Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's 4 and a red, so the same cost as Kolaghan, but easier to cast because no black. It is a 3/4, and whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you make a treasure token. Now, the important thing there is that it does not say non-token. And I pair that with the Criminal Past background, because it has choose a background, which is your commander creature gets Menace and +X+0, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. I played that a couple times over the weekend. And in addition to the Ganax and Criminal Past deck, the only other 2 decks that I played twice over the weekend were Nadar and Lendon. Yeah, so all in all, I want to say games were never super outmatched. There were things that other people did that seemed very powerful, and there were things that I did that seemed very powerful, like equipping an Atali with the Helm of the Host and just going ham. It was a lot of fun. And I met a lot of great people, and 10 out of 10 would do it again. But I think that's going to do it for this episode, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.